Hey cats, it's your midsole man, Eddbud here. Sometimes the lure of a load of air, foam and rubber is just too strong. I got one of those exclusive access emails from Nike and I ended up picking up the PEGASUS Premium. It's not a shoe that I was particularly interested in, but yeah, they got me. 190 odd quid outlay on this one, which is, yeah. But is this new version of the winged horse model gonna take off, or is it just gonna head back to the hangar? Let's find out. Thanks for tuning in, people, always appreciated. Do hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up like. Drop us a comment as well to help with that YouTube algorithm. Dankeschön. So, picked up the PEGASUS Premium with my own cash. This isn't one of those freebie reviews, 190 quid. And I can tell you now, it's not worth that. I got some reasonable miles into the shoe to give you my initial impressions. I have a whopping 367 grams in my UK 11, US 12. Apparently in the sample size it's only 325 grams, but yeah, it's quite a substantial shoe in hand and on foot. Huge midsole stack here. I've got about 46 millimeters in the heel and about 36 in the forefoot. Just about ties in with what Nike are advertising for this one in terms of the actual drop and the stack as well. Remember, bigger size, bigger shoes, bigger stack, okay? Width-wise, it's actually very narrow. I was quite surprised. About 11.9 centimeters up front, and then in the heel, I've got about 9.6. So it's quite narrow back here, considering the stack height, okay? Quite difficult to measure the foams here. Nike always coat their foams in a lot of paint. The ZoomX stuff feels pretty standard, though, to what you'd expect from that type of foam. And the ReactX here is very soft, almost softer actually than the ZoomX. Yeah, I've no idea what pressure it's under or anything like that. Maybe it changes depending on, you know, the temperature and all that sort of stuff, but it's pretty bouncy. It's pretty much what you get in the Alpha Fly. Okay, we'll start with the upper first, and there's quite a lot of it. I have to say, this is quite a plush shoe. When I took it out of the box, I was quite surprised actually by the weight. Doesn't really feel like a shoe I want to go out and do a long run in, that's for sure. Kind of like a daily cruiser, maybe some steady paced miles. That's kind of what it feels like it wants me to run. I can't see myself taking this one out for like a marathon training long run of like 20 miles or something. That would be, yeah, it just doesn't feel very enticing to do that. There's stacks of padding around the heel area of the shoe and quite a considerable heel counter as well. In fact, there's a lot of elements here that Nike have thrown onto this upper. There's some reflective pieces that go all the way around. There's these plasticky Nike swooshes. I've got one at the front here as well. There's loads of reinforcements around the front of the toe box, and you've got quite a considerable Nike swoosh on the side, which is adding a little bit of structure to the upper. The sides have got that web-like mesh that kind of pull the laces around the foot to create a decent lockdown. The tongue's quite thick actually. It's got some perforations at the front, but the actual sort of business end of it has got quite a lot of padding, and then you've got this weird tongue tab thing. I've no idea where they put these things on there. Useless. Laces themselves, I just about had enough for a double knot when using a runner's knot. You've got to have pretty good dexterity to do it, and don't try it with gloves on. Now, one major gripe I do have with this shoe, I did take it out when the temperatures were like 2 or 3 degrees, and I came back with like frozen feet. My toes were absolutely freezing, no feeling in them whatsoever, and that's mainly down to this toe box. It is ridiculously breathable, even more perhaps so than the Alpha Fly now, the Alpha Fly 3. Kind of reminds me a little bit of when I took the Alpha Fly original out on a long run and my toes came back like completely petrified. So just be aware of that if you do run quite constantly in like cold temperatures. If you're in like warmer temperatures, then this shoe could be like the GOAT. I think the tongue padding, the significant heel counter here, and the plastic mesh are all adding up to, you know, making this shoe quite a bit heavier than it really needs to be. I mean, in fairness, the upper of the shoe is actually quite comfortable. There's some like Vomero 15 vibes. Kind of reminds me a little bit, I guess, of the PEGASUS 35 as well. I really like that shoe. It's just not an ideal release window for something like this, you know, during the depths of winter. You know, having this type of mesh in the toe box is just asking for it. That said, it's comfortable, maybe a little bit on the narrow side. It does taper in quite considerably on the lateral side of the upper there. So those with wide feet, you might want to stay clear of this one. It's alright for a plush cruiser. I'll give it a 2.6 out of 3 for the upper so far. Midsole. Midsole. midsole now. So midsole wise, is quite a bit to unpack with this one. The Pegasus Premium, it's a little bit unstable underfoot, and I think some people are going to find that very sort of narrow stack that we've got just unusable. I think it's down to the mixture of foams and the air unit as well. Inherently in the heel, it's just really unstable. If you've got any sort of stability issues, avoid this shoe. I can only recommend this one for neutral runners, perhaps if you're landing mid to forefoot, and that kind of means that all this stuff back here is completely irrelevant almost. I'd only probably use this up to about 6 or 7 miles. I can't see myself doing long runs in it. It's just too hefty. I found it a little bit unconventional, and I just kept putting the handbrake on when I started to turn up the pace. I just didn't want to run in it like that. I think the inherent instability is around that React X area that we've got here in the heel. That wedge of foam is very soft, perhaps even softer than the Zoom X actually, in terms of like its properties. Just compresses very quickly, and then you're left with a much harder and more rigid air unit here. There ain't a lot of flex to this shoe either. It really does want you to engage like the whole of that midsole. Think a bit like biting into a BLT sandwich, where you've got the nice soft bread that compresses, and then you've got the sort of rigid bacon. Now there is a bit of bounce to the shoe due to that air unit. You can feel it certainly, but is it actually a sort of really advantageous thing? It's a little bit like that Fast RB from Puma, you know, put all this tech into it, but does it actually enhance the running experience? And I'm not entirely sure that it does. You know, it's kind of cool to look at because you've got this whole air unit underfoot, but does it work? Still, the jury's out on that one. As I said, the weight of the shoe just made me feel like after about 6 miles I'd had enough. Just makes you fatigue a little bit earlier, perhaps due to the weight. I'm a slight runner though. Perhaps if you're a heavier built runner, you might get a little bit more out of the foam combination here, though I still think you're going to need some pretty strong ankles regardless. Let's face it, if it's a daily shoe, then it's going to be more aimed at doing those easier pace, slower miles. Maybe you'll be landing more sort of heel to midfoot on that, and there's just better options out there. They've got a much wider base than this one. I'm going with a 2.5 out of 3 for the midsole so far. Outsole wise, there's some pretty tough lugs here. It does feel a little bit more up for it and kind of tough and rugged, I suppose, than some of the rubber that Nike's used before. I think I know why they've done that, because you do have this air zoom unit directly underneath that. I think they've put it in to try and create a little bit of protection, you know, like a layer of armor there, like a shield. I've got loads of small stones trapped in between the lugs that are just the right size for little bits of gravel and things to get embedded in there, so you're gonna need to get the jeweler's screwdriver out on this one. Now there is quite a bit of that air zoom unit that's actually exposed throughout the outsole here. I'm a little bit worried about that. Don't take this on gravel. You know, if you're running near like a local screw fix and they've dropped a load of screws or nails on the floor, yeah, could be a bit dicey. The other thing that amplifies the instability here is this channel that they've cut out right at the rear of the shoe, and I think that's just making the shoe that little bit more unstable and amplifying the narrowness we have. Now don't get me wrong, the grip was decent. Tried it on some wet surfaces too and it was alright, but just despite the thicker rubber that we've got here, I can't help worrying about the longevity of the shoe, because obviously if you burst this air unit, then it's done. The React X that they've used here does feel a little bit more like that we found in the Pegasus Trail 5. Really nice and soft. Actually one of the best Nike shoes in a long time, that one. No idea, of course, as to the durability on this one yet. It doesn't seem to be shredding or anything like that early on. So as a reasonably versatile option, I think it'll be okay. I'd avoid the trails though. Crushed up stones and gravel and stuff are just asking for it with this air zoom unit that's exposed. I'll give it a 2.7 out of 3 for the outsole so far. Got to talk value on this one, and it's hard to give it a really great value score at 190 quid here in the UK. It's a heavy shoe. It's kind of less comfortable and exciting to run in than the Invincible run, less engaging due to that quite rigid midsole that we've got here, and a somewhat unpredictable ride as well, depending on where you land in the shoe. And of course you don't have the width that you've got in the forefoot and the heel that you have in the Invincible. I mean, it's a decent quality shoe out the box, one of the better ones in fact that I've tried from Nike, certainly than their sort of lower tier shoes, but you'd expect that for that type of money, wouldn't you? Maybe they're using a new factory or something, who knows? So at least you've got a slightly more premium feel here. They've upgraded the insole as well. There's an Ortholite insole included in the Pegasus Premium. But it's just a bit of a contradiction of a shoe, really. It's not versatile, too heavy, really, that for what I want for long runs. It's just too much upper as well. It's a little bit too plush. The reflective pieces on the upper, of course, are welcomed, but it's just creating a lot more weight that we don't really need. You know, get rid of some of the padding, the plasticky swooshes, and you just bring the shoe down in weight. It's just going to make it more versatile. You know, I could see a streamlined version of this working without all these unnecessary parts. But at 190 quid, it's not something I can recommend to you guys unless you're one of the seasoned footwear fanciers. So as it stands, the PEGASUS Premium, it's just not really something that I think anyone needs all that much. An expensive luxury and a shoe that I just don't quite get. It's certainly not the big, you know, Nike return to form. Maybe it will become a great leisure shoe, I don't know. I'll give it a 2.5 out of 3 for value. I mean, it's well put together, but it's just way too expensive. So if I've totaled the scores out correctly, that gives us a 10.3 out of 12 after my initial runs for the Nike PEGASUS Premium. So not essential by any stretch. The Zoom Fly 6 is still the GOAT. Have you picked this one up? Are you enjoying it? Or have you sent it back already? Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. Musical interlude time. You guys all know I'm a big rock and roll fan, and one of my favourite artists was always been Little Richard. Absolutely randomly, it came on in the car earlier on. Ooh My Soul features all the classic Little Richard trademarks, you know, the very high oohs, and there's a wild pace and rhythm to this one, and it's a really great one, I think, from a sort of crowd pleasing point of view, because you've got the pauses and then the delivery of the title of the track, which people just seem to dig. You know, Little Richard had some fantastic tunes, but the best versions of them really were performed with sounds incorporated when he came over to the UK and performed in the 60s. They were a band that just understood the Little Richard sound. They had a great sort of rhythm section along with that sort of brass, and yeah, that was what makes Little Richard tracks special. It's having those brass sections in place. They just sound wonderful. Go and check out some of his stuff. Little Richard, especially Ooh My Soul. Thanks for tuning in, people. Hope you enjoyed today's PEGASUS Premium review. Unbiased, of course. Nike have never sent me anything. Hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up like. Also, drop us a comment for the algorithm. My name's Eddbud, and I'll be seeing you